Algernon by Hilaire Belloc, read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. Algernon, who played with a loaded gun and, on missing his sister, was reprimanded by his father. Young Algernon, the doctor's son, was playing with a loaded gun. He pointed it towards his sister, aimed very carefully, but missed her. His father, who was standing near, the loud explosion chanced to hear, and reprimanded Algernon for playing with a loaded gun. End of poem.
The Beautiful Toilet by Ezra Pound, read for LibriVox.org by Alan Drake. Blue. Blue is the grass above the river, and the willows have overfilled the close garden, and within, the mistress, in the midmost of her youth, white of face, hesitates passing the door. Slender, she puts forth a slender hand. And she was a courtesan in the old days, and she has married a sot, who now goes drunkenly out, and leaves her too much alone. End of poem by Mei Sheng, B.C. 140. This recording is in the public domain.
Charles Augustus Fortescue by Hilaire Belloc, read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. The nicest child I ever knew was Charles Augustus Fortescue. He never lost his cap, or tore his stockings or his pinafore. In eating bread he made no crumbs. He was extremely fond of sums, to which, however, he preferred the parsing of a Latin word. He sought, when it was within his power, for information twice an hour. And as for finding mutton fat unappetizing, far from that, he often at his father's board would beg them of his own accord to give him, if they did not mind, the greasiest morsels they could find. His later years did not belie the promise of his infancy. In public life he always tried to take a judgment broad and wide. In private, none was more than he renowned for quiet courtesy. He rose at once in his career, and long before his 40th year had wedded Fifi, only child of Bunyan, first Lord Aberfield. He thus became immensely rich, and built the splendid mansion which is called the Cedars, Muswell Hill, where he resides in affluence still, to show what everybody might become by simply doing right. End of poem.
Father William by Lewis Carroll, read for LibriVox.org by Glenn Hallstrom. "You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white. Yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right?" "In my youth," Father William replied to his son, "I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I am perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again." "You are old," said the youth, "as I mentioned before, and you have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault and did the door. Pray, what is the reason of that?" "In my youth," said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, "I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling a box, allow me to sell you a couple." "You are old," said the youth, "and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose, with the bones in the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it?" "I took to the law, and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave my jaw has lasted the rest of my life." "You are old," said the youth. "One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever?" "I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough," said his father. "Don't give yourself airs. You think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Franklin Hyde by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. Franklin Hyde, who caroused in the dirt and was corrected by his uncle. His uncle came upon Franklin Hyde carousing in the dirt. He shook him hard from side to side and hit him till it hurt, exclaiming with a final thud, "Take that, abandoned boy, for playing with disgusting mud as though it were a toy." Moral. From Franklin Hyde's adventures learn to pass your leisure time in cleanly merriment, and turn from mud and ooze and slime and every form of nastiness. But on the other hand, children in ordinary dress may always play with sand. End of poem. George by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. George, who played with a dangerous toy and suffered a catastrophe of considerable dimensions. When George's grandmamma was told that George had been as good as gold, she promised in the afternoon to buy him an immense balloon. And so she did, but when it came it got into the candle flame, and being of a dangerous sort, exploded with a loud report. The lights went out, the windows broke, the room was filled with reeking smoke. And in the darkness shrieks and yells were mingled with electric bells, and falling masonry, and groans and crunching as of broken bones, and dreadful shrieks when, worst of all, the house itself began to fall. It tottered, shuddering to and fro, then crashed into the street below, which happened to be Savile Row. When help arrived, among the dead were Cousin Mary, little Fred, the footman, both of them, the groom, the man that cleaned the billiard-room, the chaplain, and the still-room maid, and I am dreadfully afraid that Monsieur Champignon the chef will now be permanently deaf. And both his aides are much the same, while George, who was in part to blame, received, you will regret to hear, a nasty lump behind the ear. Moral. The moral is that little boys should not be given dangerous toys. End of poem. Godolphin Horne by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. Godolphin Horne, who was cursed with the sin of pride and became a bootblack. Godolphin Horne was nobly born. He held the human race in scorn, and lived with all his sisters where his father lived in Berkeley Square. And oh, the lad was deathly proud. He never shook your hand or bowed, but merely smirked and nodded, thus. How perfectly ridiculous! Alas, that such affected tricks should flourish in a child of 6, for such was young Godolphin's age. Just then the court required a page, whereat the Lord High Chamberlain, the kindest and the best of men, he went good-naturedly and took a perfectly enormous book called People Qualified to be Attendant on His Majesty, and murmured, as he scanned the list to see that no one should be missed, "There's William Cootes has got the flu, and Billy Higgs would never do, and Guy de Vere is far too young, and wasn't that Dalton's father hung? And as for Alexander Byng, I think I know the kind of thing. A churchman, cleanly, nobly born. Come, let us say Godolphin Horne." But hardly had he said the word when murmurs of dissent were heard. The King of Iceland's eldest son said, "Thank you, I am taking none." The aged Duchess of Athlone remarked in her sub-acid tone, "I doubt if he is what we need," with which the bishops all agreed. And even Lady Mary Flood, so kind and oh, so really good, said no, he wouldn't do at all. He makes us feel a lot too small. The Chamberlain said, "Well, well, well, no doubt you're right, one cannot tell." He took his gold and diamond pen and scratched Godolphin out again. So now Godolphin is the boy who blacks the boots at the Savoy. End of poem. Henry King by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. At last he swallowed some, which tied itself in ugly knots inside. Physicians of the utmost fame were called at once, but when they came they answered, as they took their fees, "There is no cure for this disease. Henry will very soon be dead." His parents stood about his bed, lamenting his untimely death, when Henry, with his latest breath, cried, "Oh, my friends, be warned by me, that breakfast, dinner, lunch, and tea are all the human frame requires." With that the wretched child expires. End of poem. Hildebrand by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. Hildebrand, who was frightened by a passing motor and was brought to reason. "Oh, murder! What was that, papa?" "My child, it was a motor car, a most ingenious toy, designed to captivate and charm much rather than to rouse alarm in any English boy. What would your great-grandfather, who was aide-de-camp to General Brew, and lost a leg at Waterloo, and Quatrabas and Ligny too, and died at Trafalgar, what would he have remarked to hear his young descendant shriek with fear, because he happened to be near a harmless motor-car? But do not fret about it. Come, we'll off to town and purchase some." End of poem. Jim by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. There was a boy whose name was Jim. His friends were very good to him. They gave him tea and cakes and jam and slices of delicious ham and chocolate with pink inside and little tricycles to ride, and read him stories through and through, and even took him to the zoo. But here it was the dreadful fate befell him, which I now relate. You know, or at least you ought to know, for I have often told you so, that children never are allowed to leave their nurses in a crowd. Now this was Jim's especial foible. He ran away when he was able, and on this inauspicious day he slipped his hand and ran away. He hadn't gone a yard when, bang, with open jaws a lion sprang, and hungrily began to eat the boy, beginning at his feet. Now, just imagine how it feels when first your toes, and then your heels, and then by gradual degrees your shins and ankles, calves and knees are slowly eaten, bit by bit. No wonder Jim detested it. No wonder that he shouted, "Hi!" The honest keeper heard his cry. Though very fat, he almost ran to help the little gentleman. "Ponto," he ordered as he came, for Ponto was the lion's name. "Ponto," he cried with angry frown, "let go, sir, down, sir, put it down." The lion made a sudden stop. He let the dainty morsel drop, and slunk reluctant to his cage, snarling with disappointed rage. But when he bent him over Jim, the honest keeper's eyes were dim. The lion having reached his head, the miserable boy was dead. When nurse informed his parents, they were more concerned than I can say. His mother, as she dried her eyes, said, "Well, it gives me no surprise. He would not do as he was told." His father, who was self-controlled, bade all the children round attend to James's miserable end, and always keep a hold of nurse for fear of finding something worse. End of poem.
Life by Charlotte Bronte. Read for LibriVox.org by Robin Cotter, Toronto, Ontario, September 2006. Life, believe, is not a dream, so dark as sages say. Oft a little morning rain foretells a pleasant day. Sometimes there are clouds of gloom, but these are transient all. If the shower will make the roses bloom, oh, why lament its fall? Rapidly, merrily, life's sunny hours flit by. Gratefully, cheerily, enjoy them as they fly. What though death at times steps in and calls our best away? What though sorrow seems to win, or hope a heavy sway? Yet hope again elastic springs, unconquered though she fell. Still buoyant are her golden wings, still strong to bear us well. Manfully, fearlessly, the day of trial bear, for gloriously, victoriously, can courage quell despair. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Lord Lundy by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. Lord Lundy, who was too freely moved to tears and thereby ruined his political career. Lord Lundy, from his earliest years, was far too freely moved to tears. For instance, if his mother said, "Lundy, it's time to go to bed," he bellowed like a little Turk. Or if his father, Lord Dunkirk, said "Hi" in a commanding tone, "Hi, Lundy, leave the cat alone," Lord Lundy, letting go its tail, would raise so terrible a wail as moved his grandpapa the Duke to utter the severe rebuke, "When I, sir, was a little boy, an animal was not a toy." His father's elder sister, who was married to a parvenu, confided to her husband, "Drat! The miserable peevish brat! Why don't they drown the little beast?" Suggestions which, to say the least, are not what we expect to hear from daughters of an English peer. His grandmamma, his mother's mother, who had some dignity or other, the Garter, or no matter what, I can't remember all that lot, said, "Oh, that I were brisk and spry to give him that for which to cry." An empty wish, alas, for she was blind and nearly 93. The dear old butler thought, but there, I really neither know nor care for what the dear old butler thought. In my opinion, butlers ought to know their place, and not to play the old retainer night and day. I'm getting tired, and so are you. Let's cut the poem into two. End of poem. Lord Lundy, Second Canto, by Hilaire Belloc. Read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. It happened to Lord Lundy then, as happens to so many men towards the age of 26, they shoved him into politics, in which profession he commanded the income that his rank demanded, in turn as secretary for India, the colonies, and war. But very soon his friends began to doubt if he were quite the man. Thus, if a member rose to say, as members do from day to day, arising out of that reply, Lord Lundy would begin to cry. A hint at harmless little jobs would shake him with convulsive sobs, while as for revelations, these would simply bring him to his knees and leave him whimpering like a child. It drove his colleagues raving wild. They let him sink from post to post, from 1,500 at the most to 8 and barely 6, and then to be curator of Big Ben. And finally there came a threat to oust him from the cabinet. The Duke, his aged grandsire, bore the shame till he could bear no more. He rallied his declining powers, summoned the youth to Brackley Towers, and bitterly addressed him thus: "Sir, you have disappointed us. We had intended you to be the next Prime Minister but 3. The stocks were sold, the press was squared, the middle class was quite prepared. But as it is, my language fails. Go out and govern New South Wales." The aged patriot groaned and died, and gracious, how Lord Lundy cried. End of poem.
Poem by the Bridge at Ten-Shin by Ezra Pound. Recorded for LibriVox.org by Alan Drake. March has come to the bridgehead. Peach boughs and apricot boughs hang over 1,000 gates. At morning there are flowers to cut the heart, and evening drives them on the eastward flowing waters. Petals are on the gone waters and on the going, and on the back swirling eddies. But today's men are not the men of the old days, though they hang in the same way over the bridge rail. The sea's color moves at the dawn, and the princes still stand in rows about the throne, and the moon still falls over the portals of Saigo-yo, and clings to the walls and the gate-top. With head-gear glittering against the cloud and sun, the lords go forth from the court and into far borders. They ride upon dragon-like horses, upon horses with head-trappings of yellow metal, and the streets make way for their passage. Haughty their passing, haughty their steps as they go into great banquets, to high halls and curious food, to the perfumed air and girls dancing, to clear flutes and clear singing, to the dance of 70 couples, to the mad chase through the gardens. Night and day are given over to pleasure, and they think it will last 1,000 autumns, unwearying autumns. For them the yellow dogs howl portents in vain. And what are they compared to the Lady Ryokushu that was of hate? Who among them is a man like Han-rei, who departed alone with his mistress, with her hair unbound, and he his own skiff's man? End of poem by Rihaku. This recording is in the public domain.
Rebecca by Hilaire Belloc, read for LibriVox.org by Martin Clifton. Rebecca, who slammed doors for fun and perished miserably. A trick that everyone abhors in little girls is slamming doors. A wealthy banker's little daughter, who lived in Palace Green, Bayswater, by name Rebecca Offendort, was given to this furious sport. She would deliberately go and slam the door like Billy-O to make her Uncle Jacob start. She was not really bad at heart, but only rather rude and wild. She was an aggravating child. It happened that a marble bust of Abraham was standing just above the door this little lamb had carefully prepared to slam, and down it came. It knocked her flat. It laid her out. She looked like that. Her funeral sermon, which was long and followed by a sacred song, mentioned her virtues, it is true, but dwelt upon her vices too, and showed the dreadful end of one who goes and slams the door for fun. The children, who were brought to hear the awful tale from far and near, were much impressed, and inly swore they never more would slam the door, as often they had done before. End of poem.
The River Merchant's Wife, a Letter, by Ezra Pound. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Drake. While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played about the front gate, pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat, playing with blue plums. And we went on living in the village of Chokan, 2 small people without dislike or suspicion. At 14 I married my lord Yu. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the wall. Called to 1,000 times, I never looked back. At 15 I stopped scowling. I desired my dust to be mingled with yours, forever and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout? At 16 you departed. You went into far Kuto-yen, by the river of swirling eddies, and you have been gone 5 months. The monkeys make sorrowful noise overhead. You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now the moss is grown, the different mosses, too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August over the grass in the west garden. They hurt me. I grow older. If you are coming down through the narrows of the river Kiang, please let me know beforehand, I will come out to meet you, as far as Chofu-sa. By Rihaku. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The River Song by Ezra Pound. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Drake. This boat is of chateau wood, and its gunwales a cut magnolia. Musicians with jewelled flutes and with pipes of gold fill full the sides in rows, and our wine is rich for 1,000 cups. We carry singing girls, drift with the drifting water. Yet Senin needs a yellow stork for a charger, and all our seamen would follow the white gulls or ride them. Kutsu's prose song hangs with the sun and moon. King So's terraced palace is now but barren hill. But I draw pen on this barge, causing the 5 peaks to tremble, and I have joy in these words, like the joy of blue islands. If glory could last forever, then the waters of Han would flow northward. And I have moped in the emperor's garden, awaiting an order to write. I looked at the dragon pond, with its willow-colored water just reflecting the sky's tinge, and heard the 5 nightingales aimlessly singing. The eastern wind brings the green color into our island grasses at Shu. The purple house and the crimson are full of spring softness. South of the pond the willow tips are half blue and bluer. Their cords tangle in mist against the brocade-like palace. Vine strings 100 feet long hang down from the carved railings, and high over the willows the fine birds sing to each other and listen, crying "Kuan! Kuan!" for the early wind and the feel of it. The wind bundles itself into a bluish cloud and wanders off. Over 1,000 gates, over 1,000 doors are the sounds of spring singing. And the emperor is at Ko. 5 clouds hang aloft, bright on the purple sky. The imperial guards come forth from the golden house with their armor gleaming. The emperor in his jeweled car goes out to inspect his flowers. He goes out to Hori to look at the wing-flapping storks. He returns by way of Sei Rock to hear the new nightingales. For the gardens of Jo Run are full of new nightingales. Their sound is mixed in this flute. Their voice is in the 12 pipes here. By Rihaku, 8th century A.D. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Song of the Bowman of Shu by Ezra Pound. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Drake. Here we are, picking the first fern shoots and saying, "When shall we get back to our country? We are here because we have the Kennen for our foemen. We have no comfort because of these Mongols. We grub the soft fern shoots. When anyone says return, the others are full of sorrow. Sorrowful minds. Sorrow is strong. We are hungry and thirsty. Our defense is not yet made sure. No one can let his friend return. We grub the old fern stalks. We say, will we be let to go back in October? There is no ease in royal affairs. We have no comfort. Our sorrow is bitter, but we would not return to our company. What flower has come into blossom? Whose chariot? The general's. Horses, his horses even, are tired. They were strong. We have no rest. 3 battles a month. By heaven, his horses are tired. The generals are on them. The soldiers are by them. The horses are well trained. The generals have ivory arrows and quivers ornamented with fish skin. The enemy is swift. We must be careful. When we set out, the willows were drooping with spring. We come back in the snow. We go slowly. We are hungry and thirsty. Our mind is full of sorrow. Who will know our grief? End of poem by Buno, reputedly 1100 BC. This recording is in the public domain.
The Teacher's Dream by W. H. Venable. Read for LibriVox.org by Robin Cotter, Toronto, Ontario, September 2006. The weary teacher sat alone while twilight gathered on, and not a sound was heard around. The boys and girls were gone. The weary teacher sat alone, unnerved and pale was he. Bowed 'neath the yoke of care, he spoke in sad soliloquy. Another round of labor thrown away, another chain of toil and pain dragged through a tedious day. Of no avail is constant zeal, love's sacrifice is lost. The hopes of morn so golden turn each evening into dross. I squander on a barren field my strength, my life, my all. The seeds I sow will never grow, they perish where they fall. He sighed, and low upon his hands his aching brow he pressed, and o'er his frame ere long there came a soothing sense of rest. And then he lifted up his face, but started back aghast. The room by strange and sudden change assumed proportions vast. It seemed a senate hall, and one addressed a listening throng. Each burning word all bosoms stirred, applause rose loud and long. The wildered teacher thought he knew the speaker's voice and look, and for his name said he, "The same is in my record book." The stately senate hall dissolved, a church rose in its place, wherein there stood a man of God, dispensing words of grace. And though he spoke in solemn tone, and though his hair was gray, the teacher's thought was strangely wrought, "I whipped that boy today." The church, a phantom, vanished soon. What saw the teacher then? In classic gloom of alcoved room an author plied his pen. "My idlest lad," the teacher said, filled with a new surprise, "shall I behold his name enrolled among the great and wise?" The vision of a cottage home the teacher now descried. A mother's face illumed the place, her influence sanctified. A miracle, a miracle! This matron, well I know, was but a wild and careless child not half an hour ago. And when she to her children speaks of duty's golden rule, her lips repeat in accents sweet my words to her at school. The scene was changed again, and lo, the schoolhouse rude and old. Upon the wall did darkness fall, the evening air was cold. "A dream!" the sleeper waking said, then paced along the floor, and whistling slow and soft and low, he locked the schoolhouse door. And walking home, his heart was full of peace and trust and praise, and singing slow and soft and low, said after many days. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
When I Am Dead, My Dearest by Christina Rossetti. Read for LibriVox.org.
When I am dead, my dearest, sing no sad songs for me. Plant thou no roses at my head, nor shady cypress tree. Be the green grass above me, with showers and dewdrops wet. And if thou wilt, remember, and if thou wilt, forget. I shall not see the shadows, I shall not feel rain, I shall not hear the nightingale sing on as if in pain, and dreaming through the twilight that doth not rise nor set, haply I may remember, and haply may forget.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.